Welcome to Serious Coin. I'm Kelly Willis Green, and this is the podcast where we have rich conversations about wealth. I know my listeners love to travel, and not just anywhere. You have been to iconic destinations, you've had the 5-star experiences, and you're always asking the same question: where next? Well, this episode might just have the answer. My guest is Francesco Galli Zugaro, and he is CEO and founder of Aqua Expeditions. Aqua has redefined luxury and adventure through small ship expeditions to some of the most remote and beautiful places in the world. Speaking of beautiful places, Francesco joined me from his home in Lake Como, where we spoke about creating experiences that money alone can't buy. We talked about how he built Aqua from the ground up, how he thoughtfully brought his adult children into the business, and more recently, how he engineered the sale of a majority stake to a firm owned by the Pino family, placing Aqua among iconic brands like Gucci, Balenciaga, and Saint Laurent. So settle in as Francesco redefines for us what it means to travel the world in style.
I started the business 18 years ago with an intent to take guests to these biodiversity hotspots and let them see it through my eyes. And over the years, we've delivered basically one ship every 3 years to take guests to either iconic rivers of the world, the Amazon River in Peru and the Mekong between Vietnam and Cambodia, or Indonesia, sort of the eastern side of Indonesia, on ocean cruising, on small ship expeditions to see Komodo dragons and birds of paradise. Then obviously to the kind of conservation icon destination, which is Galapagos, which everybody's heard of and is definitely on people's bucket list. And then now vowing to launch in a few weeks, in early 2026, for East Africa, our first Explorer yacht covering Seychelles and Tanzania. So all this in an intimate, authentic way to get people to experience a safari-like experience in these parts of the world that I fell in love with.
And I mean, you really, I think, what I understand, paired luxury with adventure, and that it's been described as like a super yacht experience. So people aren't giving up any of the comforts that they're used to when they travel.
Finding that blend is today what that real kind of understanding of luxury is. It's not the amenities in the cabins. Yes, the people already expect at our level that the cabins on our ships should be on par with any Four Seasons, Aman, and other brands out there. And they're staying in those properties when they're not staying with us, right? That's where they're staying. So that's kind of a given. Like the room's got to be a size. It's got to be 30 square meters. It's got to be a fine. Everything in the cabins has to be perfectly sourced. But the thought going into the experience, coming back to have that, you're coming back from the Galapagos having had a cold snorkeling day, and you come back to a Ecuadorian hot cocoa right off on the main deck, and having this sense where we curate our own scents on the hand towels because we've created our scent in Bali with an American gentleman who runs a business called Republic of Soap, where my wife spent a day and a half selecting the scent to create our own scent on all our ships. All those little details, that's what our guests appreciate. And that feeling that as soon as they board our ships, it's local crew, so they're not being catered to by foreign crew on a foreign ship and in a foreign land. There is a sense of place and how the dining is curated to create these family style sharing. People just feel automatically at ease. They have cozy areas on the ship. They're elegant. Yes, the ship looks very elegant. The ships are beautiful, but it's a very relaxed kind of shoeless environment on board. People remove their shoes. Yeah, and so we select things we select specific things that people feel, okay, someone spent their time selecting that artwork or that piece or designing the uniform to give it that authenticity. And so that's like same excitement I convey to my sales team that then it conveys to our trade team that then conveys to our guests.
I know this is going to be like asking you to name your favorite child, but what
Yeah.
of those might be your favorite destinations or one that you would recommend for someone to do for the first time?
Good question. Yes, it is like ask me which is our favorite child, but I guess at the end of the day, what really drives me in that kind of that sense of adventure that I hope to appeal to all our guests is what drives me as well, which is this innate interest in exploring. So what really drives me is that scouting, that initial entry to these destinations. When I went to Galapagos 32 years ago, I fell in love love with what's today a living laboratory of evolution, and to see that natural instinct of fear disappear from wildlife and be able to have this proximity to flora and fauna that is still today so strong, where birds nest on the floors and you're basically walking around blue-footed boobies and waved albatross and frigates, and they're just, you're in their way basically. That sense is what really drives me. And so when you ask me which is my favorite one, it's pretty much the next one for me. And the one I'm most excited about is obviously our upcoming launch in East Africa, which is going to be a 15 cabin global explorer operating in Seychelles, which is obviously a destination that many of our North American guests don't necessarily know. They may venture more to Maldives rather than Seychelles. It is a more commonly European destination. But then if I told you that a day and a half navigation from Seychelles, there's an island that replicates similar guest experience to the Galapagos, and it's the Galapagos of East Africa, where there's 10 times the quantity of giant tortoises of Galapagos, people take a step back and say, wow, I didn't even I've never even heard of this island called Aldabra. And now they want to go. So that's kind of what keeps me going, you know?
So Aldabra might just be Galapagos 2.0 and is now officially on my travel list, and I expect yours as well. But beyond these gorgeous destinations, what really stood out in my conversation with Francesco was his sense of calling. And his founder story connects the dots between careers, continents, and this lifelong love of adventure. Francesco was born in Switzerland, and he grew up in 16 different countries. He went to Boston College in the US, where he met his wife, Birgit, who was from Ecuador. And then after marrying, they settled in South America, where Francesco cut his teeth in private equity. First with a fledgling telecom company that he helped build and sell successfully, and then through a deal that saw his PE firm operate cruise ships in the Galapagos. And that's when he discovered his real passion wasn't finance. It was the magic of sales, marketing, and creating experiences in remote parts of the world.
I'd been to the Amazon lodges in Ecuador and they're beautiful, but I went to the Peruvian Amazon and I thought, wow, how cool to do a riverboat. And then I just decided this is my calling. I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to take a leap of faith. I quit my job in February. By March, in spring break, I moved down to Lima. In the meantime, I'd approached my father-in-law to see if he'd be interested in coming into business with me. He thought he was retiring at the time from Deloitte and Touche after 40 years of being managing director. And he said, I'm in, let's do it. And we kind of packed up Quito after 10 years of living there, sold our homes there, and moved to Lima and took a big leap of faith to build my first river ship. And it was challenging at the time. No banks were going to finance the startup of a luxury riverboat in the Amazon. You know, it's not their their cup of tea. It's quite bold and not their type of appetite for risk. So we had to finance the first ship 100% of ourselves, which was a challenge, but we did it. And then after that, we kind of demonstrated that if we could be successful at the launching of a ship in the global financial crisis of 2008 and only be profitable since the get-go, then I think we had a business model that we hit it on the mark, and kind of from then, 18 years later, we've got 6 ships and never bit off more than we could chew, which has been our kind of consistent kind of deliverable to not be overly ambitious and just not damage that working model that delivers for us.
You know, as I listen to you, it seems that you're clearly an intrepid traveler. And then you took a risk, started a business, as you say, that banks didn't want to finance. It was in a unusual category and a new way. You redefined a category. Do you describe yourself as a risk taker?
I think I have a healthy appetite for the risk, it's not undue risk, obviously, but it's a balance between business sense and an appetite for risk. So it's a healthy kind of risk. It's that decision to be bold, but yet not undermine the measures that need to be in place to provide the basics that are required, both from a financial feasibility to a safety and both from an operational perspective sensitive to a duty of care to the destinations that we operate in. So I think finding that balance over the years and being disciplined, not to get distracted and not to divest into other businesses. It's very common for an entrepreneur basis. I've seen it with many friends in Latin America in particular, that they like to dabble in different businesses and they like to try and attempt multiple initiatives to try and see which one. But then none of them really get all the attention and the TLC they deserve. And then none of them really flourish. So I've been hyper focused on staying true to my formula, but yet having some flexibility that I go with the flow.
At its heart, Aqua Expeditions is a family business. I mean, not only was his father-in-law his first financial partner and mentor, his wife, Birgit, was a former handbag designer, and now she brings her sense of style to the interiors of the ships. And now, two of their adult children work in the company as well. Francesco had a really interesting take on how he brought them into the business.
I've got my 25-year-old and my 24-year-old in the business as well, having known that they grew up in the business and the shipyards, the conversation around the dinner table is very much aqua focused, even though my youngest begs us to change the subject at the table. But it's hard because it's such a part of our lives that it's become a lifestyle almost of ours that it's hard to really catch myself not talking about aqua. Somehow it weaves itself in the conversation.
Did you always have the intention they would join the business? Did they ask to join the business? How have you brought them in? At what level? Tell me about that. I'm sure listeners, would really like to know.
Yeah, so there's no right or wrong. It's whatever works for everybody. Everybody has a different scenario, different considerations you have to make. It's from the dynamics, I've always tried to instill upon the kids that I was blessed with finding that calling. And that doesn't mean that my calling necessarily, my why doesn't have to be everybody else's why. From a corporate perspective, today, I'd like to say that we have one common why as a business, and that at least my senior leadership team does have this common why that we're all aiming to excel in this service hospitality. And it's gained us huge reputation, at least not at the household level, but in our space. I think we're very pleased with the recognition we've gotten from both consumers and guests and travelers in trade. Outside of that, though, however, I was trying to be subtle in a way that I'm not trying to impose it on anybody. Naturally, over the years, as our kids grew up in Peru and Ecuador and then moved to Singapore, obviously being surrounded, our holidays were many times in destinations that we were vowing to go into. But having lived through that and seen that, my kids were naturally gravitated towards everything aqua. And so when they had the decision to go to school and undergraduate school, we looked at we did the college tour in the US. I went to school in Boston. My wife I met freshman year in Boston College. And I thought, okay, let's start there. Let's do the East Coast and see. And then they ended up choosing hospitality management school in Switzerland, both of them, the two oldest ones. And they fell into that. They loved it. They didn't even really look elsewhere. They said, that's what we want to do. It is at the end of the day considered one of the top schools in that space. And whilst outside of the traditional hands-on kind of operational role, it is at the end of the day an entrepreneurial business school. And I was very pleased with that experience that they had. And from then, once they graduated, I had it up already a consideration to offer them jobs. I had them go out and seek jobs and find opportunities in the space that they thought they'd want to go into. And once they had an offer, my goal was, as soon as you get an offer, I'm gonna put an offer in front of you, next to you, so you have two options to choose from. I didn't want to just say, here it's a given, you're in, here it is, take it or leave it. It's go. I didn't say anything. I kept my cards close to my chest. I said, go out, see. They never asked. And then once they had something, I was like, here's an offer that I think might interest you as you consider your options. And obviously, I had some sway, and they came in. But I did
Were they
that
surprised
after having a
by
conversation.
that?
Yeah, they were very surprised. But I did it only having had a conversation with a fellow YPO friend of mine. I'm not sure if you're familiar with YPO, the Young
Sure.
Presidents
Yes.
Organization. Yeah. So I'm a YPO member in two chapters in Singapore and Italy. And one YPO, I forget which one, he said, Francesco, if you're ever considering of exiting your business at some point in your life, you may want to reconsider bringing your kids in earlier rather than later, because what you don't want is you don't want to look back and think that you had your family business or your business that you had exited and that you never had a chance to have your kids experience that business being part of it. And so that triggered something in me, which I knew at some point and closer rather than later, I was going to go to a process which was then going to obviously, dilute my shareholding from majority to maybe important minority and so forth. And I said, you know what, let's do that. Let's do this, rather bring it in sooner, because later on it would have been maybe a difficult conversation to have with numerous parties and numerous shareholders and numerous partners that I wanted to avoid. And because I think that they have the caliber and the competitive nature, and they can bring value to the business, not just because of any other thing than I think they genuinely have the same DNA as I do. And so I did that and super pleased. My daughter's been in the business now almost 3 years. My son just over a year. And they don't work directly with me, so we have some rules of engagement that obviously avoid them to have that direct relationship with me, but they have their hierarchy in place, and they have the opportunity to grow and understand and really learn at these key moments of their lives or their professional career. Now, what that means in the future, I don't know, but at least the opportunity has been given.
That's amazing. And you have, in fact, reduced your shareholdings. It was announced this year that a company owned by the Pino family had taken a majority stake in Aqua Expeditions. And I'm wondering, I always love to ask the question of people who have monetized their life's work like that. When the deal was done, in that moment, can you recall how you felt or what went through your mind?
Yeah, I felt a high degree of gratefulness and appreciation for all the hard work. I definitely feel that, it hasn't been an easy task. 18 years, we've definitely endured our dark days. I look back thinking, wow, if I've done anything, I've proven that this model has the capacity, the staying power to withstand extremely difficult situations outside of COVID, but many difficult days, dark days where we have to have the staying power to see it through. And I have a great support system, both personally and professionally, that allowed me to stay the course and make sure that. But I think at the end of the day, the 18 years, I think it was pretty much. I put in place the key milestones over the last 18 years to make sure that I never lost sight of what eventually would be that end game. We went through a rigorous kind of, uh, you know, um, process in which multiple parties came to the table. And this outside of, I tell myself all the time, outside of the decision of choosing who I'm going to marry, is probably one of the most difficult decisions, because you make that decision once and you hope that you checked all the boxes and you did all your homework right. And this one, we're now 7, 8 months in, super happy with the relationship.
What about for you personally? How what was the surprise um, in doing the deal?
Yeah, I think that the biggest surprise was that at 51 years old, I now sit back thinking, okay, well, I could be in a position that I could, make any decision I want in the coming years to do what I want. And I think having that is extremely rewarding, to be able to sit back. And, my father-in-law always told me, he's like, you know what, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't focus on how you're going to save money here and there. Just focus on driving revenue, driving that top line. Don't try and build a business successfully on cost savings and cost cutting. This build a brand, build it, and focus on the top line. Build it, and then and obviously, yes, my wife jokes, she's like, I never knew I married a workaholic. Well, once I realized that I was workaholic, I said, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to do it for myself. And that's when 18 years ago, I decided to start Aqua. But I think the prospect that, in a year or two, I am going to be in a position where I could say, okay, what next? I can either stay in or I can exit completely. I think that's a very unique opportunity that I'm blessed to say. Not, I know not everybody has, but I take that humbly. But knowing that I've put in and done, paid my dues and put in the time and effort, not at the sacrifice of, of family time or quality. I didn't sacrifice my health. I didn't sacrifice my family. As a result, I found that perfect blend.
It's really inspiring, and definitely I can sense your passion and your excitement for the business still and everything that's
But
ahead. So, congratulations on everything and building such an extraordinary business. And Francesco, thank you. This has been great. We are near the end, but not at the end. You've listened to this podcast before, so you know that I reserve a couple of questions because my listeners are interested. Everyone has a unique relationship and journey with money and wealth. And so I reserve a couple of questions just to get a peek at your perspective on things. Growing up, what were the messages that you remember that you got about wealth from your family of origin?
good question. So, I guess obviously to respect it and to value it, I think for me is the most important aspect. I think I've tried to instill that upon my kids that whilst we are able to enjoy those, those labors of our those fruits of now our hard labor, it didn't just come for granted. And I think that from an entrepreneurial wealth that's been generated from entrepreneur from this generation and that didn't get handed down, I think people can value that a lot. Obviously, there's core values there that are always going to be in place and haven't changed. And I think to see our kids, how they respect that, how they appreciate that. We've always been respectful and mindful of that. That it's got to be earned and not, expected and not granted. And so it doesn't come for granted. I think those are kind of things that I see now, our next generation. Obviously, now we're going to be building on that kind of wealth preservation and wealth growth in the next generation. But for now, I'm super pleased to be able to look back and think, wow, those 20 years of hard work, gave us the results that we can now enjoy, but being mindful that we put in the time. And I think that's the lesson that I'd like to make sure that both myself and my kids learn from, and that they need to the same way we'll have to put in the time to enjoy those labors and be mindful of not being by any way wasteful of it and building on it.
You talk about your why in business. Now that you're at this wealth preservation stage, what's the why with your wealth?
There's a certain degree um of ability to sit back and kind of take a slightly more relaxed approach to life. There is a certain degree. I'm hyperactive, as you can hopefully tell a little bit, but without sacrificing, health and all that. I'd like to say that the approach right now is to enjoy a little bit the fruits that we've built together. Whilst we're on the road a lot. We probably spend 4 months of the year traveling. Right now, I'm able to extend my trips a little longer without that mad rush of going and coming back. Now, as being empty nesters for the last 3 years, my wife and I are able to travel together because we both have a responsibility in the business. And so then we're able to take it a little bit longer. It doesn't say easier, and there's no ease of pace, but at least not going to New York for 48 hours to Singapore for a press conference and then coming back. So there's those things that I constantly check in on myself and make sure that I'm not overdoing it, because we're definitely not getting any younger, but we are obviously wanting to extend our capacity to enjoy life.
Spending, investing, or giving money away? Which is the easiest of the three for you, and which is the most challenging, and why?
And I've definitely realized that in order to take care of our aging parents or to take care of other family members that are maybe less fortunate than us, that I have no qualms about doing that. So I found myself that now having not to question our capacity to do so, that we do that a lot more easily, is something that my wife and I are very pleased to do whenever we can. We've always been generous, just obviously now we're a lot more within the confines of what makes sense. And that always being mindful of what lessons are we teaching our kids to make sure that we're constantly double checking, make sure we're giving the right sign and we're giving the right message by doing what we're doing. But finding that balance, I think that, we all enjoy the finer things in life without being wasteful. So we're conscious of that. I'll enjoy a great, amazing pizza over any fine dining, 3-star Michelin chef restaurant any day. And you can have an amazing pizza here for €9. So finding that balance. So I don't have all the answers, but we're taking decisions on a daily basis and granting ourselves the benefits of the hard work we've put in over the years.
Last question. If you'd finish the sentence in a sentence, to me, money is
Peace of mind. I think for us, and that could be construed in many different ways, but it is the result of hard work and earned. And so for me, money is respected and earned.
a huge thank you to Francesco Galli Zugaro for joining me and sharing the journey behind Aqua Expeditions. Now, subsequent to our conversation, Aqua announced a new destination. They're going to the Norwegian Arctic in 2026. So thank you, Francesco, for this conversation and for always taking us somewhere new. And if you enjoyed this episode, the very best way you can show your support for Serious Coin is to share it and to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Podcasts like this grow almost entirely by word of mouth. So a quick review, a share, or even just passing it on to someone who might benefit makes a big difference. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Serious Coin is provided for your general interest only, and nothing we discuss should be taken as investment, tax, legal, or professional advice. Always talk to a licensed professional before you make any financial decision.